We shift our focus back here to the United States, to the courtroom and verdicts, guilty or innocent. Sometimes it's not clear-cut, but some legal cases are providing some great water cooler discussions right now, including in our very own Newsmax newsroom, to discuss several of these cases in her own inimitable, yet combative, provocative, and articulate style. It's our legal analyst, Michelle Suskauer, who's in this morning.
What kind of an introduction is that? Well, I guess thank you.
Well, you
Thank
should.
you.
I know it's hard to believe because so often we can disagree, and yet advocacy and different opinions are part and parcel of the American tradition.
I love coming on. Thank you.
We're very happy to have you,
you,
Michelle, and we're going to begin with a story out of Georgia. A child left in a hot car.
Yes. Sadly,
the child perished. Can you give us the background on that story?
This is a very tough story. This 22-month-old child was being supposedly brought to daycare, and his father was in a car seat in the back, and his father did not drop him off. Made several different stops, and they allegedly found him after work at the end of the day. He tried to revive him, but it was already too late. It was a very, very warm day in Atlanta, and that's a situation. There's so many things that have come out, but he was arrested, I believe, that same day. He's being charged with multiple counts, including murder. And now the most recent thing that's come out is that there may have been some internet searches regarding deaths and children left in cars and temperatures by either the father, the mother, or both. And the question is, when were those searches done?
And in today's environment, in the criminal justice system, how much weight do those types of internet searches carry? Because you hear from legal analysts all over the country, I mean, God knows what you search, all kinds of things, especially for folks like us who work in the news media.
Right.
We search all kinds of topics, terrorism, things of that nature.
All the time. All the time.
Yeah, so what happens then? I mean, there obviously, the burden of proof falls on the defense or the prosecutor, in this case, but how is this the type of stuff we hear now coming out in cases? Because people are willing to almost convict them in the court of public opinion based on internet searches.
Well, just sort of taking apart a couple of things that you spoke about. Have we seen this before? Sure. If you remember, maybe a little case called Casey Anthony,
right?
Where there were not alleged, but there were internet searches regarding chloroform and death using chloroform or knocking a child out with that. So obviously, she was acquitted here, so what kind of strength did the jury put on that? But in terms of a rush to judgment, there absolutely is a rush to judgment, especially in cases where they're so high profile. When for example, a spouse a wife is found dead, right away there is a rush to judgment. The husband did it. The husband must have done it. There is no presumption of innocence in the press, and that makes it very hard when we're trying these types of high-profile cases to get a fair and impartial jury. People who have not rushed to judgment already, because of course the burden is 100% on the state, not on the defense to prove you're not guilty, to prove you're.
Spoke there.
But you know what? A lot of folks think that the defendant is the one who has to prove they're not guilty, and that is not the case. We have to educate juries when we try cases.
Well, you mentioned this, and of course Atlanta, or that area being the venue, and I think back to the story of the 1996 Olympics, when there was a rush to say that the late Richard Jewell must have been the bomber in the Olympic Village, and of course nothing could be further from the truth. Now a story about an American overseas in Italy, Amanda Knox. In terms of her case, a romantic tryst gone awry. Was there something more sinister? It appears that the courts in Italy cannot decide this. Her former boyfriend apparently separating himself from her situation. Can you reacquaint us with the facts and what's happening now?
Amanda Knox, I mean, this is something that has been going on for years. Very, very high profile initial trial with several different co-defendants, including her boyfriend. There was, I believe, her roommate who was from Great Britain who was found murdered. There is someone who is serving, I believe, a life sentence for her murder, but Amanda Knox had a very, very public trial. She was convicted, and there is a very, and again, I am not an expert in Italian criminal justice, appellate system in Italy, where after years and years, she actually was found to be not guilty. She was then released, came home, which was a very, very public homecoming. And then again, the case came back. And she has been tried, or is in the process of being tried in absentia, because there was no way that she was going to go back to Italy in order to stand trial again, because she doesn't want to be stuck there. So she made a lot of public appearances, but really has been flying under the radar. Initially, when she came back, there were a lot of interviews, and we haven't really seen her.
Do you think that the American government would offer extradition for her back to Italy?
No.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think that the government was really behind her. There were some allegations of improper interrogation, allegations of really floundering with the evidence that was found in terms of contamination of it. There are a lot of questions in this case. It's a truly unfortunate case. What her argument is the person who's responsible for death is already serving time. She doesn't have anything to do with it.
A couple of other cases we want to talk about. Another murder case, international case, South Africa, Oscar Pistorius, the double amputee Olympian, friend Reva Steenkamp. This case, they postponed it for a while. They postponed it for a while. He underwent psychiatric evaluation. Now it's back in the South African courts.
And again, remember, this is a case, there's no jury. This is a case that is up to one judge. She has two, what we call sort of helpers, adjudicators, but ultimately it's going to be up to this female judge. And this is a case, I think a lot of people in the United States are saying, it's not over yet. I mean, right? It was going on and on, very, very public, very tough cross-examination with Oscar Pistorius being very, very emotional, terrible pictures, video, etc. But this is something that it seems to just have gone on and on and on. Still obviously an interest to the United States, but obviously a hero to the South Africans. He will, of course, never be the same whether he is acquitted or not, but there are options.
Speaking of that, today I think his defense team is going to put out a psychologist is going to say he is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of all this. You know, we hear that diagnosis coming from folks who served at war. I can understand if someone you cause drama in your own life, not saying he did this or not, but is that a defense you can expect to hear more and more as more of the general population has a better understanding of what PTSD is?
Well, but it's not really, how is that a defense?
I don't know, are they trying to build sympathy perhaps?
Well, but I think it's maybe could be an explanation in terms of the way that he acted on the stand. But the post-traumatic stress disorder occurred after the murder, so I can't see that would be used as a defense. But is that something that we hear about, that is being brought up as mitigation in court? Absolutely, because it's real. It's not just something that is created, and it's not just for folks who have been victimized by war.
Right, victimized by war, and they return, and there's explainable behavior, the PTSD, but then you worry about folks who are in that situation or suffering from the serious effects of PTSD, and somebody like Oscar Pistorius using this as a defense, maybe diluting it a little bit.
Well, and again, you sort of, in a case like this, you want to put out anything that would be reasonable in order to try to sway the trier of fact. The trier of fact, in this case, not a jury, but a judge.
We're going to bring it back, a minute and a half left, back to the United States, this time to the curious Commonwealth of California, the California Republic, where a nanny can get fired, but she sued under tenant eviction laws of family. This nanny comes out this morning, says she didn't get fired, she quit her job, but she wants to stay right there. Does this change anything in this case?
This is just a strange, what do you say, only in California? I mean, usually it's only in Florida, only in California. I don't know whether this changes anything in the case, whether she quit or whether she was fired, again, in terms of the eviction. But it's bizarre.
Well, one effective measure, and this is not legal advice but practical advice, apparently the family has padlocked the refrigerator to restrict her access to nutrition. So that may work. Please don't feed the nanny.
But again, again, no common sense when it comes to eviction and it comes to employees living in the house. It just seems like you want laws to, sometimes they just make absolutely no sense. This is one of those situations where employment versus landlord-tenant intersects and does not work.
We'll have to see if the California Assembly takes this up in Sacramento. Given some of the other issues they take up, maybe it's time they need to concentrate on this. Michelle Suskauer, as always, we thank you for your insights, and we'd like to hear from you. The case of the nanny who won't leave. What do you think of it? Why don't you tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, #AmericasForum.